and then given the name of the column. So I'll name the new column to be EDOB, which would stand for employee date of birth. And then I'll finally give the data type of this new column. So the data type would be date. So I'll put a semicolon. I'll hit execute. So commands have been completed successfully. Now let me have a glance at the modified table. Select star from employee. Right. So we see that this new column, employee date of birth, has been added. So we see that this new column, employee date of birth, has been added to our employee table. Now let's see how can we drop a column from a table. Again, we'll start off by giving the keywords alt table, and then we'll give the table name. After that, we'll give the keywords drop column and specify the name of the column which is to be dropped. So I want to drop this new column which I have just added to this employee table. So let me write the command for that. So I want to drop this new column EDOB which I have just added to this employee table. So let me write the command for that. Alter table, and then the name of the table is employee. Alter table, and then the name of the table is employee. After that, I will give in the keywords drop column, and I want to drop the EDOB column from this employee database. I'll put a semicolon, hit execute. So again, the commands have been successfully executed. Now let me have a glance at the modified table. Select star from employee. I'll put a semicolon, execute. So again, the new column which you had just added has been dropped. So this is how we can work with the alter table statement. So the merge statement helps us to perform insert, update and delete in just one statement. This means we no longer require multiple statements to perform insert, update and delete. And for the merge statement, we require two tables, a source table and a target table. So the source table basically contains all the changes which are to be applied to the target table. And the target table is that table upon which we'll be implementing all the changes. Now the merge statement basically joins the target table to the source table using a common column in both the tables. And based on how the rows match up, we can perform insert, delete and update operations on the target table. Now let's have a look at the syntax of the merge statement. So we'll start with the merge keyword and then give the name of the target table and assign it an alias using the as keyword. Then we'll type using and give the name of the source table and also assign it an alias using the as keyword again. After that, we'll type on and then set the join condition. Then we'll type when matched. So if the rows match up based on the join condition, then we'll go ahead and update the target table. After that, we check when not matched by target. So this basically means that if there are some rows which are present in the source table but not in the target table, then we'll go ahead and insert those rows from the source table into the target table. And finally, we check when not matched by source. So here we are checking if there are some rows which are present in the target table but not in the source table, then we'll go ahead and delete those rows from the target table. And for the practical purpose, we'll be using these two tables. So this is our source table with the name employee source, and this is our target table with the name employee target. So using the merge statement, we'll be updating the e-salary and e-age columns in the target table wherever there's a match. Also, insert the records with employee ID 7 and employee ID 8 into the target table from the source table. And delete the records with employee ID 4 and employee ID 5 from the target table because they're not present in the source table. So let's go to SQL Server and work with a merge statement. Right, so we have our two tables right in front of us. This is the employee source table and this is the employee target table. And we also have the merge syntax to apply on these two tables. So we'll type merge and then give the name of the target table, employee target. We'll assign it an alias. Similarly, we'll give the employee source table and then assign it an alias s. After that, we'll type on and then set the join condition. So the join condition is t.eid is equal to s.eid. So we basically set the join condition on the employee ID columns of the source table and the target table. Then we have when matched. So if there is a match between the rows of these two tables, then we'll go ahead and update the target table. So here in the update statement, we have t.eSalary equals s.eSalary and t.eAge is equal to s.eAge. So if the records match, then I'll be setting the values of the salary column of the target table to be equal to the values of the salary column of the source table. Similarly, I'll also set the values of the age column of the target table to be equal to the values of the age column of the source table. And then we have when not matched by target. So here we are checking if there are some rows which are present in the source table but not in the target table. And if that is the case, we'll go ahead and insert all of those into these columns of the target table. And the values would be coming from the source table. So this employee ID column from the target table would be getting the values from the employee ID column of the source table. Similarly, this employee name column of the target table would be getting its values from the employee name column of this source table. And finally, we'll check when not matched by source. So if there are some rows which are present in the target table but not present in the source table, then we'll just delete all of those rows. So I'll select all of this and I'll click on execute. So you see that 8 rows have been affected. Now let me type the select statement and have a glance at the modified employee target table. Select star from employee target. I'll select this. I'll click on execute. Right, so this is our modified employee target table. So we also have our original employee target table over here. So let me compare these two tables. So we see that initially Sam's salary was $95,000 and his age was 45. And after applying the merge statement, his salary changed to $93,000 and his age changed from 45 to 40. Similarly, Anne's initial salary was $125,000 and after applying the merge statement, her salary changed to $130,000. And then with the merge statement, we have also inserted the records with employee ID 7 and employee ID 8 and deleted these two records from the employee target table. So this is how we can work with the merge statement. So these are the two types of user-defined functions in SQL. We have scalar-valued functions and table-valued functions. We'll start with the scalar-valued functions. So as the name states, a scalar-valued function always returns a scalar value. So a scalar value could be int, varchar, date and so on. And this is the syntax for a scalar valued function. So we'll type create function and then we'll give the function name. And inside the parenthesis, we'll specify the names of the parameters and their data types. And since the function is going to return a value, we'll type the returns keyword and specify the type of data which will be returned. After that, we'll type as begin.
Just a quick info, guys. Intellipaat provides online SQL training in partnership with Microsoft. The course link of which is given in the description below. Now, let's continue with the session.
And then give the function body and then return the final scalar value. Finally, we'll use the end keyword to end the function. So let's go to SQL Server and create our first scalar valued function. So I'm going to create a scalar valued function which will take one integer value, add 5 more to the original value and return the updated value. So let me type the syntax for that. Create function and then I'll give the function name which would be add 5 and inside the parenthesis I'll pass the first parameter. So I'll name the parameter to be num and this would be of integer type. After that I'll type the returns keyword and then the type of data which we'll be returning is also of integer type. After that I'll type as begin and since all we have to do is add 5 more to the original value, so I'll not write anything inside this. So I'll directly type the return keyword and inside this return keyword I will add 5 more to the parameter value. So that would be @num plus 5. So what we are basically doing over here is the value which is sent as parameter inside this function will take it and add 5 more to that value and then return it. And finally, I'll type the n keyword to end this function. So let me hit execute. Right, so we have successfully created this add5 function. Now let me go ahead and call this function. So to call the function, I'll type select and then I'll have to type dbo dot and then I'd have to give the function name which is add5. Now let's say I'll pass in the number 10. I'll select this, I'll hit execute. Right, so we see that this function works properly. So I've sent 10 and the result which we've got is 15. Similarly, let me send 100 as the parameter. Now I'll select, I'll hit execute. Right, so the value which is returned is 105. So this is how we can create a scalar valued function. Then we have table valued functions. So these table valued functions return a table instead of a scalar. And this is the syntax for a table valued function. So here the return type is table. So after the returns keyword, we'll type in table because we are supposed to return a table. After that, we'll give the keywords as return and then give in the select statement. Now you need to keep in mind that there are no begin and end keywords for the table valued function. So let's go to SQL Server and create our first table valued function. Now I'll be creating a function which would help me to individually extract the male employees and the female employees from the employee table. So before I do that, let me actually have a glance at the employee table first. So I'll type select star from employee. Right, so we have this employee table right in front of us. Now let me go ahead and create the command. So again, I'll type create function and then I'll give the name of the function which would be select gender. Now inside the parenthesis, I will pass in the parameter. So I'll name the parameter to be gender and this would be of varchar type. So as varchar and the length would be 20. After that, I'll give the returns keyword and since this is a table valued function, the return type would be table. So I'll type as return and then give in parenthesis and inside the parenthesis, I will give my select statement. So the select statement would go something like this. Select star from employee where gender is equal to @gender. So this gender is basically the gender column from the employee table and this @gender is the parameter which will be passing inside this function. So let's say if the user passes the value male inside this function, then we'll be extracting all of the records where the gender value is male. Similarly, if the user passes the value female inside this, then we'll be extracting all of the female employees from this table. So let me select this, let me hit execute. Right, so we have also created this select gender function. So now using this function, let me extract all of the male employees from the employee table. So to do that, the syntax would be a bit different. Select star from and then I'll type dbo dot and then give the name of the function which would be select gender and inside the parenthesis I will pass in the value and since I want all of the male employees I'll type male over here. Right, so I'm typing select star from this because this will basically return a table and from the table which is returned I would want all of the records. So let me select this, I'll hit execute. Right, so we have successfully extracted all of the male employees from the employee table. Similarly, if I'd have to extract all of the female employees, the syntax would be similar. So I'll type select star from and then I'll type dbo dot select gender and then I will pass in the value female. I will select this, I'll hit execute. So again, we have successfully extracted the female employees from the employee table. So this is how we can create table valued functions in SQL. So a transaction is basically a group of commands which change data stored in a database. And a transaction is treated as one single unit. So this transaction basically ensures that either all of these commands are executed successfully or none of them is. So let's say if one of the commands in the transaction fails, then all the commands will fail and any data which was modified in the database will be rolled back. Similarly, if all the commands inside the transaction execute successfully, only then the transaction will be committed. So this is how transactions ensure integrity of data. So now I'll begin a transaction, and inside the transaction, I'll try to update this age value from 45 to 30. So let me write the syntax to begin a transaction. So I'll type begin and then type transaction. And inside this, I'll give all of those SQL statements which either have to be committed or rollback. So over here, I'll give the update statement. I'll type update and then give the name of the table, which would be employee. Set age to be equal to 30, where name is equal to Sam. So I'll select these two statements and I'll execute them. So we see that one row has been affected. So now let me have a glance at the modified table. So I'll type select star from employee. I will select this command over here. I'll execute this. Right, so we see that initially the age value was 45, and after we applied this update command, the age has been changed from 45 to 30. Now, since this command is inside a transaction, we have the option to either roll back this command or commit this command. So now let me go ahead and actually roll back this transaction. So to do that, I'll type rollback transaction. So now let me select this. I'll click on execute. So we see that the commands have been completed successfully. Now let me again have a glance at the employee table. Right. So since we have rolled back the transaction, we see that the age value has gone back to the original value, which is 45. So initially using the update command, we had changed the age value from 45 to 30. And after that, we had rolled back the transaction. Now what I'll do is, I'll execute these two statements again. And let me have a glance at the table. Right, so again we see that the age has been changed to 30. So this time, instead of rolling back the transaction, I will commit the transaction. So I'll type commit transaction. So I'll select this, I'll click execute. Now let me have a glance at the table. So this time the transaction has been committed and the change is permanent. So this is how we can either commit or roll back the commands using a transaction. Now let's look at another example. So in this example, we are using transactions inside the try catch block. So over here, we are beginning the try block, and inside this, we are beginning the transaction. And inside the transaction, we are trying to update the salary value to be equal to 50, where the gender value is equal to male. So wherever the gender is equal to male, we'll update that salary value to be equal to 50. Similarly, wherever the gender value is equal to female, I will change that salary value to be 195 divided by 0, which would give us an undefined value. And after that, we'll commit this transaction and print transaction committed. Now, since we have put this transaction inside the try block, if any error occurs, that will be sent to the catch block and we will roll back the transaction. So over here, we see that we are dividing 195 with 0. And since this gives us an undefined value, we will get an error. And that error will be handled in this catch block and we will roll back the transaction. So let me execute this. So you see that the transaction has been rolled back because we get an error inside the try block. Now what I'll do is, I will remove this divided by 0 and run this command again. So this time we see that the transaction has been committed because there was no error inside the try block. So now let me have a glance at the modified employee table. So I'll type select star from employee. I'll select this. I'll click on execute. Right. So we see that we have changed the salary value to be 50, where gender is equal to male. Similarly, I have changed the salary value to be equal to 195, where the gender is equal to female. This is how we can work with transactions in SQL.
So on that note, this brings us to the applications of SQL. So SQL has a couple of applications, and let me tell you one by one. SQL can be used as a data definition language, DDL for short. What this basically means is that you can pretty much, create a database on your own, define its structure on your own, use it on your own, and just, discard it when you're done with it. So this doesn't have to be just you. This can be among hundreds and thousands of people. You can scale it obviously, but then know that with respect to data definition language, you have all the right where you can individually create a database, define the structure, and delete it when you're done with it as well, guys. And this brings us to the next application, which is data manipulation language, because SQL can be used as DML as well. So what it basically means is that when we have something already in establishment, like data which is already present in our database, we need to go on changing something in that database. We need to update a database, we need to delete a row, we need to update a column, and so much more. So in that particular case, we can use SQL as a data manipulation language, where you can pretty much alter stuff in the table. You can go on adding, removing, and whatnot. So this brings us to the next application, which is the DCL, guys, data control language. So data control language is mainly concerned with your data in terms of how you can avoid corruption and how you can avoid misuse as well. So pretty much, as you know, data has to be protected, and misusing data is extremely easy. Even though with all the security measures these days. So SQL can pretty much be used in terms of DCL, where we can protect the databases against corruption and misuse in a very good way as well, guys. And the next application of SQL is pretty much that it can go on to be used as a very good client server language. You can pretty much program on the client side and the server side, where you can connect front ends and back ends together, where we have an entire architecture which is set up what we call as the client server architecture, where there is one server, and then there are lots of clients. I'm sorry about that. There's lots of clients connected to that particular server, and then we pretty much go on querying and talking to the server, getting the details from the server for each individual client, and more, guys. So the next application pretty much is what we call as the 3-tier architecture. The 3-tier architecture is something very similar to the client server client architecture, where pretty much we have something called as an application server, we have a database, and all of these together in terms of the server, the client, and the database form the 3 basic tier architectures, guys. So it's the client, it's the server, and the database, where the data is present, and it can go through the server, where it can go to multiple machines, or pretty much you can have it come to the server and talk to the client directly as well, guys. So on that note, what do you guys think about the applications of SQL? Can you think about any direct applications of SQL? If you can think of it, make sure to head to the comment section right now.
Just a quick info, guys. Intellipaat provides online SQL training in partnership with Microsoft. The course link of which is given in the description below.
Okay guys, we've come to the end of this session. I hope this session was helpful and informative for you. If you have any queries, leave a comment down below.
Thanks for watching.